today I'm going to be going through some of the books that I read recently. As I said in some previous videos, I recently started a new job, so I haven't had a ton of time to read. But I've been making do. I've been listening to more audiobooks on my commute, so I'll talk about those as well, though of course I don't have the physical copies of them. But let's just go ahead and get started. The first book that I'm going to talk about is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. So, if you haven't heard of Susanna Clarke, she is the author of one of my favorite books of all time, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And that book is like a masterpiece to me. It's incredibly long, incredibly detailed. The world building is just unbelievable in that book. So I was interested to see what this one would be like. I've had it since it came out, but I haven't got around to actually reading it until I think this was around October, November of last year that I read it, and I read it all in one sitting. This is a short book. This is, first of all, it's beautifully presented. It has this sort of glowing margin part, but it is very short, and as you can see here, it's very evenly spaced compared to, if you've read Jonathan Strange, you'll know what I mean. But anyway, this is very different from Jonathan Strange in every way. I recently learned that Susanna Clarke, this author, is actually chronically ill, so it takes her a while to, do all the research and finish a book. And this book, the world building is not like Jonathan Strange. It's not overly complex. In fact, it's fairly simple, but it's also written quite differently. The voice is different to Jonathan Strange. So I don't know how much I can explain about this book without, not giving it away, but just, I feel like it's one of those books where you kind of just have to go into it open-minded and just read it, see what you find. It sucks you in. Like I said, I read this all in one sitting in a Starbucks in a few hours, and I did not expect that. I heard some reviews of this book that it was boring, which I just find it's so not my experience. But it's all subjective. I'll say a few things about it. I feel that I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the writing style. It was kind of sad. And it definitely impacted me. Like, it made me think. The ending, I wouldn't say the ending was very satisfying in terms of I still had a lot of questions that weren't answered. And the plot was kind of predictable in the sense that as you're reading it and as it unfolds, you kind of see what's coming. And the world that this takes place in is so amazing and interesting to me. I kind of wish that the reveal wasn't what it was, I guess. Just personally, I felt that I wish she had taken it in a different direction. But it's very beautifully written, very moving. It's yeah. I definitely recommend it. It was one of those books where I kind of wish that I had someone to talk with about it afterwards. And I read a lot of like different theories on what the book was meant to mean and what the ending meant. And not that it was overly confusing, it was just, it definitely left you with questions. So, but like I said, it was enjoyable. It really hooked me in. I was interested in it, and I wish it was twice as long. Almost like I felt like, I don't know, I just love Susanna Clarke so much that I'm always hoping for more from her. But yeah, here, maybe we can read the front cover of it and see if that maybe helps. Give you a taste of what the book is about. Piranesi's house is no ordinary building. Its rooms are infinite, its corridors endless. Its walls are lined with thousands upon thousands of statues, each one different from all the others. Within the labyrinth of halls, an ocean is imprisoned. Waves thunder up staircases, rooms are flooded in an instant. But Piranesi is not afraid. He understands the tides as he understands the pattern of the labyrinth itself. He lives to explore the house. There is one other person in the house, a man called the Other, who visits Piranesi twice a week and asks for help with research into a great and secret knowledge. But as Piranesi explores, evidence emerges of another person, and a terrible truth begins to unravel, revealing a world beyond the one Piranesi has always known. So, yes. It's sad. It's beautiful. I love her descriptions of the setting. I love the world that she has created for this book. And like I said, I wish it was even longer. Alright. So the next book I'm going to talk about is called Time and Again by Jack Finney. This was a book recommended to me by my father, who really enjoyed it. It is, I believe it was written in, let me see, it's about, say, 50 years old. Okay, 1970, so yeah, about 50. It's actually illustrated, which is interesting. And it is a time travel novel. So, the premise is actually pretty interesting. It's about a man who is contracted by the government to go back in time to the 1800s, and the way that they go back in time is interesting. It's actually through a form of hypnosis, which I've never seen before. You know, there's no machine or anything that takes them back. It's more of they convince themselves so completely that they are actually in that time and they know so much about it that they're able to just phase into it. It's pretty interesting. I had never encountered a time travel book with that premise, so it was pretty cool. Very different from the book that I read last year called To Say Nothing of the Dog, which was very much so. There's a machine that they take, like a time travel machine that they go into, and it transports them. And that was also an 1800s book. So, yes, this book, that's the premise. It is an interesting book for sure. I will say the characters, in my opinion, were not the most likable, especially the main character. At least to me, I was kind of, I don't know, it was hard to care about him. I think where this book really shined for me was some of the descriptions of some of the people and the scenes in the 1800s. So this actually takes place in New York City. So I think where it really shines is the way he really transports you to that time, and the pictures also help. The plot itself is not really that gripping to me. I didn't find it satisfying or all that interesting. But like I said, the best part of this book is some of the scenes that he creates. I'll show you maybe some of the pictures. I wish that this book went more into the actual mechanics of how the time travel worked, because, like I said, I was really interested in how they described it. I thought it was very different, and I hoped that they would go more into the mechanics of it, but they really didn't. It was more about this man's experience traveling back. But still, I think I enjoyed the other book, To Say Nothing of the Dog, more than I enjoyed this one. But I'm glad that I read it, and I can see why some people really like it, especially for the time. It's pretty different. So yes, that is Time and Again by Jack Finney. Alright, so I do just want to say there's another book that I read Amy Tan is a fiction author, but she wrote this book that takes place actually during the pandemic, and it's filled with these beautiful drawings and observations that she made about the birds in her garden. And it's so fun, and I really love it. And I'm so upset that I lost it because there's so many cute pictures that I could have shown you guys. But maybe I'll buy it again. But it was pretty expensive. So, but it also features this beautiful introduction by Sibley, who's another bird fanatic and artist, and that was so lovely too. I loved that book, so I just want to mention it. I highly recommend if you're into bird watching. It's just a really fun read. Again, that was Backyard Bird Chronicles, I believe, by Amy Tan, and hopefully I find it again because I want to finish it. But that was one of the books I bought new actually at Barnes & Noble. So, very sad. But the other book I bought at Barnes & Noble I didn't lose. And this is The Full Moon Coffee Shop by Mai Mochizuki. And it's a Japanese bestseller, and it caught my eye. It seemed fun. Yeah, so this was another book I read in one sitting. It's pretty short, pretty easy, and it's fun. It's a story about this like coffee shop that kind of appears to people when they need it, and the coffee shop is owned by these talking cats who basically look at everyone's astrological chart and figure out how they need to make a change in their lives. So it's fun, it's sweet. It's like a fun kind of rainy day read. I'm not that into astrology myself, but I can imagine if you are into it, you'd probably get more from this book. So there's that part of it. But it's sweet, like I said. There's not much that I can really say about it, just because it's pretty simple. There's no big plot, but it's cute, it's fun, so I'm glad that I got it. It was a fun read. Show the back. Full Moon Coffee Shop has no fixed location. It might appear in the middle of a familiar shopping arcade, by the station at the end of the railway line, or on a quiet riverbank. At the Full Moon Coffee Shop, we don't take your order. Instead, we bring you desserts, meals, and drinks, selected just for you. Who knows, maybe it's all a dream. So, super fun. And it's a good book to read when you don't have a lot of time to read because it's really easy to finish, get through. The next book I'm going to talk about is a little bit different. It's a nonfiction, and it is called book that I actually asked for Christmas. So I wanted to learn more about squirrels because I don't know much about them. And I have to say, this definitely scratched that itch. I mean, this book is surprisingly technical. It is surprisingly dense. And it's a great book to read right before you go to sleep. It's just, it's informative. This book is, I feel that its target audience is more like other researchers because, it's not meant to be written like nicely necessarily, but it is very fun. This particular book goes into lots of studies and experiments that they did with a population of eastern gray squirrels, which are the ones that I have in my area, and also fox squirrels, which I have never seen, but they're a little bit larger. That's a fox squirrel right here. So, it goes through the behavior of squirrels, and it teaches a lot about their habits and biology. It was definitely really interesting to me. So I recommend this if you are interested in getting more information on squirrels and learn more about why they do what they do. Yeah, so pretty straightforward nonfiction. But it's kind of hard to find books about squirrels, to be honest, so this was a good one to get. And this is a little bit older. I think it's 2000. Am I right about that? It's 2001, so about 20 years. So it made me interested to see what other research has been done since then and what else they figured out. But the squirrels are pretty amazing, I have to say. And I always knew that they had to be, but reading this, it gives you a whole new perspective of, why they do all the crazy things they do and how impressive they are. So yeah, I recommend this one. Alright, there's one more actual physical book I'm going to go into, and then I'm going to talk about the 2 audiobooks that I listened to. So, this was a book I read recently, Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. I had been meaning to read something by this author for a long time, but this is the first time I've read anything by him, and I kind of had high hopes because I heard a lot of good things, and it seemed like it could be up my alley, so I was excited to give it a try. And this book is about 2 stories intertwining. It's about the story of a boy who runs away from home and kind of finds himself, and then it's also about an old man who is on a mission that he doesn't really understand. And I will say that second story is definitely the better of the two. I will just come out and say this book was not for me. It was very disappointing, honestly. How do I begin? So, there definitely were some beautifully written parts. I will give him that. And the character of the old man, Nakata, was I really liked him, and I liked his storyline a lot more. He has this touching relationship with a truck driver who sort of sees him as like a grandfather figure, and that was very touching. In terms of some of the other characters, they kind of fall flat in being three-dimensional in my opinion. So that's kind of hard. And I will say the main thing that kind of took me out of this book was the constant explicit scenes, I'll say. That didn't really feel, they weren't well written in my opinion, and it was kind of sad, because, I don't know, to me it was just kind of clear that this author is clearly just he's making them because he likes to write them, and he's not particularly good at them, and definitely came off as pretty uncomfortable reading it. So that was hard to get past, and you can say with those things like, well, it was written to make you feel something, or it adds to the plot, and I feel that may be true for some of the scenes in here, but there were others that were not needed at all for the plot. So pretty not really justifiable in my opinion, and very much written as your back of the alley kind of scenes, which is just odd because some of the other parts of the book are written so in such a flowery way that it's just very odd to me. But yeah, the plot itself as well, there were a lot of questions that were unanswered that I wish he'd gone more into. The backstory of the old man. I mean, the main character was the boy, which was sad because I didn't really care as much for his plot as much as I did for the old man. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can really recommend this, honestly. Didn't really resonate with me much. After reading this, honestly, I was so disappointed and upset that I thought, okay, I'm never reading anything else by this author. And I did talk to some people, and they said, well, some of his other books are better, and you have to read this one, and this one's, more, not as good as the others. So I may read another by him at some point, but I definitely not for a while. Just, recovering from the disappointment of this one, I guess. Let's see. Beautiful page turn noises. parts were interesting. I wish he'd expanded more on some stuff. Say if you do read this one, proceed with caution as well. It's definitely 18 plus, and it's definitely has some sensitive content. So just be aware of that. I kind of wish it had said that, or just so I could have been more prepared for it. But so that was all of the actual physical copies of books that I read. Like I said, I haven't had a ton of time over the past few months, but I did want to talk about two different audiobooks that I read. Here, why don't I put all these books out? So I have something to play with while I talk about them. So the first audiobook that I read or listened to, and I will say it just to start, like I don't usually go for audiobooks. I'm pretty picky about the voice, and I don't know, I'm pretty picky. But the first one I read was called The Hidden Life of Trees, I believe, by Peter Wellman, which is another book I've been meaning to read since it came out. And it was very, very nice, very good. It's a nonfiction about trees, the life cycle of trees. It kind of goes into a lot of interesting qualities and facts about trees that I did not know, that I think a lot of people don't know. And it really gives you an interesting perspective about plants in general, and how similar they actually can be to animals. So it was definitely really interesting, fun. I apologize for my radiator, by the way. It's cold. So I recommend it. It was almost sad in a lot of parts. Like, I love trees so much. It was sad thinking about them in peril, But definitely a fun book if you're looking to learn more about trees and their different behaviors. So I recommend it. I think it was a good read. I heard that they made a comic version of it. I saw it at a bookstore, and it was pretty cool. So that's another option if you want a physical copy with a lot of pictures in it. So I might get that at some point. I would love to have the physical copy of that book, actually. But yes, that was one that I read, and the other book that I recently finished is called The Comfort of Crows by Margaret Rangel, I believe. And that is another nonfiction. It is, so Margaret Rangel, it's actually narrated by her, which is always fun. And she has a really fun voice, so I have no complaints about that. But it's about a year of her life, and she talks a lot about the nature around her, and also somewhat about the changes that she goes through during this year and her emotional states. So it's kind of like she talks about all the nature, the animals in her yard, but at the same time her life is also changing, and it's kind of mirrored there. So it's another kind of bittersweet also love to have a hard copy of that one. So that is The Comfort of Crows by Margaret Frankel. And that brings this video to an end for today. I didn't have a ton of books to go through because I have not read a ton. But I'm hoping that I'll get more time. There's actually a new bookstore opening up near me that I'm really excited to go to. So, can't wait for that. And overall, I think the books that I most recommend are Piranesi, honestly, Tree Squirrels, and The Backyard Chronicles by Amy Tan, which I don't have the actual book with me, unfortunately. And I also recommend the 2 nonfiction audiobooks if you're looking for an audiobook or just a nonfiction that The Hidden Life of Trees is a lot more educational.